Welcome one and all to the Q-Switch Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Spence. The mission of this show is to tackle subjects currently impacting ophthalmology, pulling in leading eye care professionals and industry players to discuss their unique perspectives. So let's jump right in. In this episode of the Q-Switch, we welcome Dr. Naina Gupta, who is a comprehensive ophthalmologist and owner of Horizon Eye Center. Dr. Gupta, welcome, and where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Horizon Eye Center in McKinney, Texas, right outside of Dallas.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, great. In this episode, we'll be discussing the common challenges and solutions of scaling ophthalmic practice. How is this topic relevant to you, and what experience have you had that may help others navigate this similar experience?
Yeah, so I have a very kind of niche specific experience. I actually opened my practice, a solo ophthalmology practice in 2020. So I opened it up all by myself, kind of started it from scratch. So kind of a different process, maybe not scaling on a large scale, but just generally how to start from nothing and then build your way up.
Yeah, that would certainly be considered scaling, whether it's from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, or 2 to 4, and so on. And I think each type of scaling has its own set of unique challenges, and I'm sure we'll get some of your thoughts and experiences today. So great. Well, great meeting you, and this is truly an honor to have you join the show. Well, fabulous. Well, let's start by having you share your origin story and maybe include the light bulb moment that put you on the path to where you are today.
Yeah, so I basically obviously did my residency in ophthalmology, wanted to do comprehensive ophthalmology, went through a few jobs that I wasn't too satisfied with. And so I found the opportunity to, really make my own path, open my own practice. And I guess by saying finding the opportunity, I mean, I just took the opportunity really, but
Sure.
I opened my own practice. So I opened it in 2020, and I don't know that I had like an aha moment at any point. I think I just had an idea of how I really wanted to practice and take care of patients. And so in order to fulfill that vision of what I wanted as a physician, I just kind of found myself on a series of steps, including opening this practice. To be more specific, I basically opened by myself. I mean, I was picking up the phone, I was teching patients, I was doing it all in the beginning. So in that sense, I've kind of scaled up into a more, what we kind of see as a typical practice, and still quite not typical as a solo practitioner, but now I have receptionist techs and so on. So that's kind of how I've scaled up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, Doc. Sounds like you've had quite the journey. Starting and scaling your practice is no small endeavor. There's a lot that comes with that decision, and I'm sure it's not the same. It's not for everybody. So can you share your motivation, your mindset, and what made this the right time for you?
Yeah, I don't think the timing was too great. So essentially, I told you I had been through a couple of positions, employee positions, and I just didn't really feel like I was able to provide the quality care that I need, that I wanted to for my patients. We all go into medicine for different reasons, and my motivation was largely based on creating connections and relationships with patients, providing care in that respect. And so, nowadays, I think every physician and most ophthalmologists agree that time is precious and time is limited. And so nowadays we get to spend a very little time with patients. And in order to basically combat that, I've started this lean practice, essentially keeping my overhead low, not having to see a large volume of patients, and then actually being able to spend the quality time. So it's really been my motivation to just focus on patient care, be able to answer their questions, spend time with them, and create that relationship.
Okay, well, I think all those are valid reasons to want to be able to strike it on your own and really do things your way. And again, it's not for everybody, and takes a great deal of courage and fortitude and risk-taking spirit to, I think, really take control of how you see patient care and how to really run a practice. And I'm going to get into that whole lean practice thing in just a moment as well. But before I do that, let's talk about the challenges of scaling an ophthalmic practice or starting out a practice. What are your top 3 biggest obstacles that you encountered when facing opening up a practice?
Yeah, I think it's probably a very similar tune for most physicians nowadays. I think insurance companies are becoming really problematic in order to basically be able to do this type of practice, a solo practice, a lean practice where you don't have a lot of bloated staff to do PAs and paperwork and all of that stuff, and really, take the middleman out of my patient-physician relationship. I mean, honestly, nowadays, most reason patients are unhappy is usually an insurance related issue. And that's frustrating. It's such a detriment, I think, to quality patient care. So that's something that I notice is really, really difficult. I think another thing is as a solo practitioner, so I do everything. So I do our billing, I do our coding, I do our HR as well, hiring and firing. HR is just a whole new world entirely. I went to medical school, I went to residency, I didn't learn anything about hiring or that kind of stuff. And really creating an environment um, that's not only a place where physician patient care can blossom, but also employees can blossom. I think that's another bag of worms entirely.
You mentioned you've decided to go the lean practice route where you do a lot
Yeah.
of the things that you would normally hire people for,
Yeah.
which again, putting yourself in that situation where you want to pursue that type of a model for your practice, that brings its own new set of challenges, particularly with the learning curve. Like you mentioned, the HR piece, completely new to you. Most places conventionally would hire somebody in HR with an HR background, degree, certification, what have you, to take that
Mhm.
on. And learning some of those things, do you feel that's helped you or hurt you in terms of your pace and progress of getting your practice established?
I mean, I definitely think it's helped, right? Like, I think knowing as much as you possibly can about every aspect, especially if you have a practice that you're running, is so crucial. I know if there's a bill or a claim that's been denied, I know when it shouldn't be denied, why it shouldn't be denied, all of those things. I mean, I used to spend hours on the phone with insurance companies. And so, even having that sort of really intimate, I guess not intimate, but really detailed perspective on those things. Finances, I run my own finances, I do my own payroll, I do, having that I think is so helpful in running a business and understanding a business, because it's so easy for things to be outsourced and then for some point someone not to understand what's going on and things to be large things to be missed. So I think in that respect, I think doing a lot of the things on my own has helped me quite a bit in understanding a lot of the basics of my business and running a business. The other thing, I think it allows for a lot of growth. I think as physicians, we spend so much of our time educating ourselves and learning in the first 30 years of our life, plus 30 plus years of our lives, and then suddenly we go out and we can practice what we know. And there's lots to learn clinically, but I do enjoy the fact that I'm learning other aspects, business aspects. While I can get frustrated with HR, while I can get frustrated with insurance, I still appreciate the ability to learn and grow from it.
Mm-hmm. So there's a process to scaling or starting a practice. So at what stage do most people start running into growth bottlenecks, and what can be done to minimize the impacts?
I think that depends on how your model of practice really is. I do think there's a lot of ways to sort of outsource knowledge, sort of really you can find companies that will help you hire and fire, like you said. You'll find companies that will help you with your billing and coding and all that stuff. So there's lots of ways to outsource things. So I think that's one way to sort of reduce bottlenecks. I think if you're not outsourcing, if you want to learn independently and learn by your own, you're going to have to sort of realize that there are going to be bumps in the road. I think in that situation, I mean, being agile, being resilient is probably the most important thing. Realizing that, okay, things are going to change. You have to be on your feet constantly, be ready to adapt, change, hire, fire, learn more things, learn about AI, learn about technology, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
You really just have to be willing to be agile, willing to be resilient, and probably practice a little humility too, just in the learning process. Um,
Of course.
so I think those are probably two very different ways to handle it.
So almost along the same lines of bottlenecks, a lot of common mistakes are made, especially if you're new at this. I mean, you out of the box were, started this from nothing versus, having, maybe done it before for some people, or expanding and building more practices to like expanding more multiple locations. When you build or expand, how can these mistakes be avoided if at all possible?
I think, I know there's some mistakes that are just not going to be avoided. I think that one thing that you experience, I think that's really different with like the business aspect thing and medicine aspect of things is like you learn by trial and error, which is very different. In medicine, you don't want to do that. You don't want
Right.
trial and error. You want to know what you're doing. You don't want any chance for error. But in business, there's some wiggle room. Obviously, you cannot do anything illegal. You have to know what you're doing there. But there is some wiggle room. There's some trial and error. I think that is very important to understand. So I don't think that it's possible to avoid all mistakes, I guess. I think what I'm saying is you just have to be ready to make a mistake and say, okay, I've learned
Hmm.
from this. I'm going to move on. I think the other thing that's really important is community. I think reaching out to individuals in your community is so, so, so helpful. There are, as far as solo docs go or solo ophthalmologists goes, there's a whole community of solo ophthalmologists that are very, very, very willing to help, very willing to offer advice, give their point of view, even help with resources, very willing to get on the phone whenever you want just to help you talk through things, help you learn about things. And so I think reaching out is also extremely crucial. So, you can outsource it or you can ask for help. And I think that reaching out to the community provides such a sense of mutual well-being, and then also a sense of trust too. I mean, I think when you're outsourcing thing, you're paying people to do something. You have to learn to trust them in that financial environment. But when someone's in your community, a physician is very willing to get on the phone, not charging you anything, and just really wants to help you, just out of the goodness of your heart. There's a trust there that you can really appreciate as well. And so I think reaching out to your community is a huge way to avoid mistakes.
So I'd like to touch on that for just a moment because I'm in Miami and it's a area of the country where there's a lot of retirees, a lot of people of cataract age. So it's a very competitive environment, if I can say that. And they're rivals as well as they are as friends. So, and I'm sure there's pockets of these type of populations throughout the country, maybe even there in Texas. So so you're saying that you even find, even in those areas where you're competing for the same demographic of patients, you still have resources and friends that are willing to help you be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, when you're talking about people who are competitive or not, I mean, I think you have a good feel and a good sense. A, there's a reputation within the community too that you know about. B, you can get a sense from people whether what they're trying to tell you or how they're trying to tell you, whether there's a competitive vibe or not. But the truth is like for me, in my experience with most of the community members, most solo doc community members, ophthalmologists in general, I've had a pretty good experience. And I don't know if that's just the nature of how I've surrounded myself with people. But honestly, I think I'm of the mentality that there is an abundance. There is an abundance of quality care. Well, I guess I just don't feel like I think the attitude personally of going about the world saying that there's only a limited amount of business out there that is available to me and I need to guard it and I need to pretend like it's a non-abundant resource. I
Hmm.
don't think that's healthy for me, and I think that attitude has also brought similar people around it. I mean, I just think that there is just it's not a limited resource. There is many people that you can care for. Your role and your skills are much needed in the community, and you provide a different niche. I provide very, very different things than the ophthalmologist, the comprehensive ophthalmologist down the street from me. It's just true, and patients tend to feel that way too. They sort of start traveling and migrating to the people that they feel comfortable with, and so
Hmm.
I haven't. I truly have not encountered a lot of people, and I guess, yes, there have been certain people, but I have not encountered a lot of people whose attitude are, well, you're my competition. Um, Let me fight or let me compete with you in order
Hmm.
to really take over or dominate the resources in this area. I just really haven't had that experience. I mean, I have met so many solo ophthalmologists, regular ophthalmologists who are so kind, so generous with their time, with their compassion. I just really have not had that experience. So, yes, I think that does exist, but I don't think it's something that you have to encounter.
Well, I think it's quite refreshing to hear you say that because with private equity really becoming more and more the trend, and the solo practitioner is becoming um, a very small group of folks, and so you
Yeah.
almost feel like we need to band together. We're already competing against the larger practices,
Yeah.
the PE groups. I mean, we want to practice. We want to practice almost on your own. Almost have to, like I said, band together, and we're kind of let's help each other out. Let's all be let's to survive, if you will, and thrive in this environment where we have a lot of things happening around us that aren't like us. So
Yeah,
that's refreshing to hear.
it's
Well,
like we're
thanks for
the
sharing
last
that.
line in the battle, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, from a financial perspective, what are some of the key factors that practices should consider?
So I think that I think really is so physician dependent. So for example, I mean, obviously there's a different answer for someone who it's a private equity group, right, or a large ophthalmology group with multiple physicians. But if you're talking about a solo practitioner, I think having a clear understanding of what your goals for this business are. I mean, they say know your why, right? So really having a clear understanding of why you're opening this practice, what you hope to accomplish, and if what the financial ramifications of those things are. So if there is a financial point, like this is how much money you want to make, then that's a very important thing to understand going into it. And one thing that I found extremely helpful, which seems basic from a business standpoint, but I don't think that this is something that people often do, even if they're starting their own practice or business, is just a business plan, learning how cash flow works, learning how all of that stuff works. So having a business plan, understanding what it means to your bottom line to hire another person, to get rid of another person, another staff member, to get this new piece of technology, and when you're making payments, all of that stuff. Having that acute understanding of a business plan and cash flow analysis, I think, is so crucial. So then that way, I think you can allot your resources. So, for me, for example, I wanted quality time with my patients. And so understanding that, I went with a lean model. I went with a lower number of staff in order to spend that quality time. The other thing, I really believe in technology. I want to be able to offer my patients the best technology in a small practice setting that I think is really beneficial to them. And so that's why we've invested in things, or I've invested in things like the light adjustable lens, which is quite an expensive investment. But for me, it's something that I believed in, especially with my patient population. And so I think that is more of an individualistic idea of where to spend your financial resources. But I think what can help you is A, understanding the why, and B, understanding your business plan and cash flow.
So, how critical is location in site selection of an ophthalmic practice, and what drives that decision? And what was it about McKinney, Texas, that led you to establish your practice there?
Yeah, so I had a non-compete in the area. It's a pretty wide one, so I looked kind of outside of the non-compete. And McKinney is just like a really fast-growing area. The speed with which it's growing is pretty amazing. I opened it in 2020, and seeing all the businesses and everything come up, people moving in, it's been pretty incredible. And so it's just one of those really fast. It's right outside the suburbs. So if you know the Dallas DFW area, there's Dallas, and then you go up north, there's Plano and Frisco, and it's right by Frisco. And so essentially, it's the area that stands a very good chance of growing pretty rapidly because it has the space to accommodate people. And so that's what I really used to sort of pick this area. It's worked out really well for me.
So, and you said you established your practice in 2020. In the 20 years, and I think that included the first year or two was like COVID, getting out of COVID. Has the population grown? Have you seen your patient base grow in that amount of time, along with the city itself?
Yeah, the city has grown. The patient base has really grown. Yeah, so practice has grown quite a bit since 2020. And so, yeah, I think it really has sort of mimicked or followed the progression and growth of the city.
Good.
So I think
Good.
that's one thing that's really helpful. Yeah.
So outfitting an ophthalmic practice with all the diagnostic testing and lane equipment can be an overwhelming and daunting task. Prioritizing what to buy, when to buy it, and who to buy it from are all questions that are thrown in the air. How do you balance investing in new technology with maintaining profitability during that growth?
Yeah, I think it's really important that, ophthalmology, especially the comprehensive, in all fields of ophthalmology, but especially comprehensive, there's such advancements in technology with cataract surgery and the IOLs. I think it's something you actually have to really stay on top of. Really being aware of the newest lenses, being aware of the newest technology, immersing yourself in those things, I think is important. I mean, you have to just kind of keep reading these journals. I think talking to people within the community, I think has been really, really helpful to stay on top of things. But I think in general, you just kind of have to stay up to date on the technology. And then I think the truth is investing in technology that you truly believe in, not about what you hear is going to make you so much money or exponential, because I can guarantee you if there's something that you hear that's going to make a ton of money, but you don't believe in, it's just not going to do well. And if you hear something that, is iffy and you're like questionable whether you're going to make money out, but you truly believe in, you will make them return on investment. Your ROI on that is a no-brainer. So it really comes down to a product that you believe in, a product that you feel will be beneficial to your patients. And so I think staying up to date with literature and articles and getting a sense knowing your community members, other physicians within the area, I think really does help um, give you an idea of, oh, what is that retina specialist like for their lenses? Or what does that glaucoma specialist think is beneficial for their patients? Having an understanding of that. And then really, you just have to believe in what
So you mentioned that you invested into the light adjustable lens technology, and so it's almost when you say I run a lean practice, it almost when you think, well, I run everything, do everything myself, it's kind of just really lean, bare bones, and it almost, at least for me, it's like, well, she probably won't invest in like advanced technologies like advanced technology IOLs, the light adjustable lens, but not necessarily true. And you're saying that, and so why is that? Because it is almost they're almost two opposites. They almost contradict each other. Not
yeah.
the case, no.
No, well, the truth is if you really think about what you've talked to me about so far, you probably realize my main goal is quality patient care, excellent
Of
patient
course.
care, not just quality, excellent patient care. And so I do feel an obligation towards my community to provide them with the best possible technology that is available. And I don't think that those two things are counterintuitive, because really, I mean, when you're talking about a business and you're talking about your return on investment, when it comes down to your return on investment, I've run the numbers over and over and over again. If it's a product you believe in, you will be fine. I mean, already if you're thinking about investing something in the market versus in the stock market versus investing into something in your office, you're already taking the tax out of things. So when you take that out, you're already making your wagers already kind of benefiting you in a way. Or gosh, there's probably a better business term for saying this, but um, putting something in the market versus putting something in your office, when you think of even just the tax, you've already tilted the scale in one direction. And so from that aspect of things, if it's something that you truly believe in and you talk to patients in a manner that you say, I believe in this product. I believe in this product in a way that it may be beneficial to you. And I don't oversell it. I am so upfront. The first thing I tell the patients about the LAL is it is an investment of time and energy, but you will be sick of us by the end of the light adjustable lens. But I mean, I tell them that, but if this is what's going to provide you the best quality care, or I'm sorry, the best quality vision in your mind, then I think it's a really good investment. But let's talk about all the limitations of it. So maybe I won't be making as much off of the light adjustable lens as someone who has a large, huge practice, seeing 100 patients a day or multiple surgeons, but I still know that I will be able to get a return on investment. It may not be at the rate of another practice with multiple doctors, but absolutely, I will 100% get a return on my investment. It'll just may take a little bit longer. And I think that's another reason that you have to be very cognizant of why you're making the choice that you are. This is a bigger investment for you as a solo practitioner than it is for someone with a larger practice, because it's going to be a lot more of a long-term commitment.
And so you mentioned patients are at the center of, all the decisions you make. You want to provide excellent patient care. So what role do you say patients have throughout the scaling process, and how does it change as an ophthalmic practice grows, it gets bigger as yours has? And what marketing strategies do you find most effective to attract new patients to your practice?
Yeah. I guess I'll address your latter question. So the marketing strategy, honestly, what's worked best is word of mouth. Again, we are a small practice, so it's not like I'm looking to see 100 patients in a day. And so to fill my roster or fill my patient load, it doesn't require as much. And so for me, word of mouth has just been the exponential growth that has been great for me. I think it attracts the patients that, a patient tells their neighbor or a friend and they say, this is the experience that I had with them, this doctor or Dr. Gupta. And I think that in that sense, it kind of sort of really sends me the patients that have kind of like-minded ideologies and expectations of their physician and their practice. And so I think word of mouth has been the biggest point. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of your question again?
Yeah, it was what role do patients have throughout the scaling process, and how does it change as an ophthalmic practice grows?
I think what you're really asking me is more about like adding more physicians and that kind of thing. And I think that's something that's very important to really analyze and critically look at when you're growing the practice. I think it can be quite a difficult balance. Honestly, one that I have not endeavored yet, but I hope to endeavor in the future. I think focusing on patient care, but also continuing to provide volume or ability to see more patients is just always a really, really difficult balance. My hope is to, I've seen some practices do it really well, and I've seen some practices do it not very well. And I think the main indicator from what I can tell, peripherally, from what I can tell, is really focusing on the person you hire, focusing on their ideologies and making sure their ideologies and their goals are similar to yours and similar to the business in general. And so I think that ideally would be what would allow you to scale the practice and also allow for it to scale in a way that patients are continue to be happy about.
And almost an extension of that same question, how do you as a founder, and if you have an administrator, how do you identify, recruit, train, and retain the best talent to meet your staffing needs? Because especially when you're running a lean practice like yours, you have one person doing maybe a number of different playing up roles within your practice. Those folks have to be highly skilled, have great communication skills. How do you again go about identifying, recruiting, training, and retaining those folks?
Honestly, I think that there are a lot of very qualified people out there. I think that understanding what your practice needs is very, very important. There are generally certain qualities for me, like since I have a lean practice, reliability is probably the most important. Efficiency is really, really important. So I have a real good understanding of that. Some practices, they just need people there. They need lots of staff members, and they need to have that number of people in order to make the practice run. So having an understanding of what your practice needs. I think also having very clear expectations with your staff members, meaning with them, so I meet with them regularly. I have basically a written out document that goes over every single expectation for their position. And so having that clear expectation is so, so important. Another thing that some practices do, some practices don't, but I think having those clear expectations is what will set you up for success with anyone. As long, like I said, I think there are a lot of good quality candidates, but really having those clear expectations, delineating those expectations, meeting regularly, and discussing whether those are being met or not being met are so crucial to maintaining and developing and growing a really good workforce.
And as the founder of the practice, what type of culture do you, kind of in the same line of hiring staff and building a team, a lot of what has to do with success has to do with culture. As a leader, starting this business 5 years ago, what kind of cultural tone did you want to set for your practice that really impacts your patients?
I think the cultural tone that I wanted to set and have wanted to set is really kind of that feel, those old practices where it's a single doctor and you go there and everyone knows you by name and you know them by name. And it's kind of that home feeling, even though you're in a doctor's office. And I think that's a lot of what I wanted the cultural atmosphere to be like. I want my staff members to grow, to develop relationships with the patients too. I want them to know the patients by name. I want my patients to know them by name, and they do. And so I love that atmosphere of it. I love that environment. I rarely see someone who doesn't leave with a smile on their face, to tell you the truth, or honestly, upon checking in, they know my receptionist by name. Hey, Sarah, how's it going? And so I really love that environment. I want it to be that feeling. And so in that, it does have to allow a little bit for staff to have their personalities, to allow their personalities to come out and for them to develop that relationship. So that's my goal culturally. But the other thing that I want as far as for my staff, towards my staff members, is to create an environment where they feel happy coming to work. They feel dignified coming to work. They feel appreciated. They feel that they're making a difference. And I do think that that's another thing that we can provide in a smaller atmosphere, smaller environment, this lean practice. They, again, come to work. They know the patients know them, they joke with them, and they have a good time. And so I think that's another really important thing for a cultural atmosphere in this workplace.
Well, I think that's certainly a great approach to take and a great cultural tone to set, because I've been in practices throughout the country, big, small, academic centers, and the ones that I find where the patients, I wouldn't say successful, but the ones that you can see it on the patients' faces that they enjoy being there. Even if there's a small wait or small delay, they just enjoy the way they feel valued as a patient, and their journey, although it could be a long one. They know that throughout the entire time they've been taken care of, and they're valued. They get offered coffee if they're waiting. They know where the restroom is at. people know their name, that emotional connection with certain people in the office. All that really, I think, translates to a great patient experience despite going there for a health issue. And if that's part of the tone that you set, I think that you're going to continue to have a successful practice now and in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So now that you've gone through this, looking back, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently, if anything at all?
I would time it better. I basically I signed my lease in January of 2020 to open in
Oh,
July
wow.
of 2020. So so COVID hit in March. The timing was so poor, but I learned a
Bad
lot.
timing.
It was terrible timing. I don't think I could have hit it worse, but it was such a learning process and such a growth experience. And so that, I come away being grateful. So I think that's the only thing that I would change is really the timing.
Totally agree. So I always end on a question that sounds something like this. If you were to give advice to a colleague who were looking to follow in your footsteps of scaling or starting out on a practice, what would it be?
I would say do it. I would say do it with an understanding. Know why you're doing it, know what you want to accomplish, what your expectations are, and make sure you have a really fine-tooth understanding of what you're getting into and what you can expect. I would say if you are going to do it with just some compassion for yourself and some grace as well for yourself. That would probably be my advice. But I would say do it.
Well, good. Well, hopefully, folks who are taking this podcast follow your advice and get out there and make it happen. So, Dr. Gupta, that was truly amazing. I love it when folks come on the show and share and speak to their real world experiences like you have. There are people that want and need to know what you have to say on the subject. So I appreciate you coming on this platform and sharing your thoughts and stories with them. So it is my pleasure to have you visit the Q Switch podcast. I wish you and your team at Horizon Eye Center the best of success in McKinney, Texas. They are truly lucky to have you to serve their community. So before I sign off, if anyone wanted to, reach out to you and pick your brain and learn more about what you have to say about starting a practice, particularly a lean one like yours, where can they find you?
You can email me. If I can, I'll include, if you'll allow me to, I'll include my email address in the show notes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the best. I'd be happy to answer questions. Just like people have been there for me, I'd be very happy to be there for you.
As always, we'd like to thank Riverside FM and Passion Media for making this show possible. That's a wrap for this episode of the Q Swiss Conversations podcast. Until next time, this is Spence, and I'm out.